March 31, 2009. Benjamin Netanyahu is sworn in as Prime Minister of Israel. Since then, except for one short break, he has never left power. Today, he's Israel's longest-serving leader and one of the most controversial. He survived political storms, corruption trials, massive protests, and even assassination threats. He reshaped Israel's economy, signed historic peace deals with Arab nations, and led the country through wars and crises. Yet millions of his own people call him a danger to democracy. Others say he is the only one strong enough to protect Israel. How did this one man hold power for so long? What drives him? And what will happen when his era finally ends? This is the untold story of Benjamin Netanyahu, the man who refused to lose. Stay until the end, because the truth is more shocking than you think.
Let us begin with a simple truth. On March 31, 2009, Benjamin Netanyahu stood in the Knesset and took the oath as Prime Minister of Israel. Since that day, with only a short interruption of 18 months, he has never truly left power. Today, in 2026, he remains the longest-serving Prime Minister of Israel's history. A man who has outlasted wars, protests, corruption trials, coalition collapses, and even international arrest warrants. How does one person hold the highest office for so long in a democracy as fractured and volatile as Israel's? How does a politician so deeply loved by some and so fiercely hated by others keep returning to lead again and again? Some call him the guardian of Israel's security, the only leader strong enough to protect the nation against endless threats. Others call him a danger to democracy, a man who bent institutions, delayed justice, and pushed Israel towards permanent conflict rather than peace. His story is not just about politics, it is about survival. About a boy born in 1949, only 1 year after Israel itself was born, who grew up between two worlds, the newborn state of Israel and the safety of America. A soldier who fought in the Six-Day War and nearly died in the War of Attrition. A brother shattered by the death of Yonatan at Entebbe in 1976. A loss that hardened his belief that Israel must never again be weak. He studied at MIT, built a career in diplomacy at the United Nations, and returned home to lead Likud, the party of the right. He became Prime Minister for the first time in 1996, the youngest ever at age 46, but lost power after only 3 years. Many thought his career was over. They were wrong. He came back in 2009 and never really left. He turned Israel into a high-tech security fortress, Iron Dome in the sky, cyber walls, precision strikes. He signed the Abraham Accords, peace with 4 Arab nations, something no one thought possible. He faced down Iran, Hezbollah, Hamas, and the international community, often alone. Yet the cost has been high. Corruption indictments, massive street protests, judicial reform battles that divided the nation, and the deadliest attack in Israel's history on October 7, 2023, a day that shook the country to its core and placed new questions over his legacy. Today, in 2026, Netanyahu stands at another crossroads. Will he lead Israel through another war? Will he finally face judgment in court? Or will he once again defy every prediction and remain in power? This documentary tells the full story, from a child of the new state, through wars and diplomacy, to the man who has shaped modern Israel more than anyone alive. We will walk through his childhood in Tel Aviv and America, his time as a soldier in the Six-Day War and Yom Kippur, the pain of losing his brother at Entebbe in 1976, his rise from diplomat to prime minister, the doctrine that made him unbreakable, the Abraham Accords that changed the Middle East, the corruption cases that almost ended him, and the October 7th attacks that redefined everything. Stay with us, because the story of Benjamin Netanyahu is not just the story of one man, it is the story of Israel itself, its fears, its strength, its divisions, and its uncertain future. This is only the beginning.
Let us now turn our attention to the early life and birth of Benjamin Netanyahu in Tel Aviv, a time when Israel itself was still a very young nation, finding its place in a turbulent world. Benjamin Netanyahu was born on October 21, 1949, in Tel Aviv, less than a year and a half after the State of Israel came into being. The Declaration of Independence had been proclaimed on May 14, 1948, ending the British mandate for Palestine and establishing the Jewish state after centuries of dispersion and the horrors of the Holocaust. Tel Aviv in 1949 was a bustling modern city by Middle Eastern standards, a center of Jewish immigration, culture, and new beginnings. It had been founded in 1909 as a garden suburb of the ancient port city of Jaffa, and by the late 1940s, it was already the economic and cultural heart of the new state. The streets were filled with people speaking many languages: Hebrew, Yiddish, Arabic, Russian, Polish, German, all blending into the new Israeli identity. Benjamin's father was Benzion Netanyahu, born in Warsaw in 1910 as Benzion Milejkowski. The family changed their surname to Netanyahu, meaning God has given, after migrating to Mandatory Palestine in 1920. Benzion was a historian, specializing in the history of the Jewish community in medieval Spain before the expulsion of 1492. He was a committed Zionist and a strong believer in the idea of a greater Israel, a Jewish state that would include all of the historic land of Israel, from the Mediterranean to the Jordan River and beyond. Benjamin's mother, Tzila Segal, was born in Petach Tikva in 1912. Her family had immigrated from Minneapolis in the United States, originally from Lithuania in the Russian Empire in the 1870s, fleeing anti-Semitism. Tzila and Benzion married in 1944 and had 3 sons: Yonatan, born 1946, Benjamin, 1949, and Iddo, 1952. The family was close-knit, with a strong sense of Jewish identity and pride in the new state. Benjamin's early years were shaped by the realities of a nation at war and in transition. The 1948 Arab-Israeli War had ended only months before his birth, leaving Israel with new borders but also ongoing tension. Egypt controlled Gaza, Jordan held the West Bank and East Jerusalem, and the armistice lines were fragile. The young state faced economic hardship, mass immigration, and the task of building a society from many different communities. In the mid-1950s, the Netanyahu family moved to the United States so Benzion could take up academic positions. He taught Hebrew literature first at Dropsy College in Philadelphia and later at Cornell University in New York. This meant Benjamin and his brothers spent much of their childhood in America, attending school in Pennsylvania, speaking English at home and Hebrew with family. They returned to Israel regularly, maintaining strong ties to the homeland. This dual identity, Israeli by birth and heritage, American by education and daily life, influenced Benjamin deeply. He grew up with a sense of both the vulnerability of the young state and the strength of Jewish determination. His father's passionate Zionism and belief in a secure, expansive Israel were constant themes in family conversations. By the time Benjamin was a teenager, the family was back in Israel part-time. The 1956 Suez Crisis and other regional tensions reminded everyone that peace was fragile. Benjamin attended high school in Cheltenham, Pennsylvania, but his heart remained connected to Israel. In 1967, at age 18, he returned permanently to join the Israeli Defense Forces just as the Six-Day War was unfolding. These early years in Tel Aviv and America laid the foundation for a life shaped by two cultures, a deep sense of Jewish destiny, and an unwavering belief in Israel's right to exist securely in its historic homeland. In the next sections, we will see how these beginnings led Benjamin into military service and the defining conflicts of his youth. Please stay with us. Benjamin Netanyahu's early life and birth in Tel Aviv, a time of new beginnings for both a boy and a nation, set the course for a remarkable journey.
Let us now turn our attention to the family background and Zionist roots of Benjamin Netanyahu, a heritage that deeply shaped his worldview and political path from the very beginning. Benjamin was the middle son of Benzion Netanyahu and Sila Segal, born into a family already committed to the idea of a strong, secure Jewish homeland. His father, Benzion Netanyahu, was born in Warsaw in 1910 as Benzion Milakovsky. The family changed their surname to Netanyahu, meaning God has given, after migrating to Mandatory Palestine in 1920. Benzion grew up in Jerusalem during the British Mandate period, a time of growing tension between Jewish immigrants and the Arab population. He studied history at the Hebrew University and became a noted scholar of medieval Jewish life in Spain, particularly the period leading to the expulsion of Jews in 1492. Benzion was far more than an academic. He was a passionate revisionist Zionist, a follower of Ze'ev Jabotinsky, who advocated for a maximalist Jewish state on both sides of the Jordan River. Benzion believed strongly in a greater Israel that would include all of historic Palestine and beyond. He worked as executive director of the New Zionist Organization in the 1940s, lobbying in the United States for support of Jewish statehood. His writings and lectures emphasized Jewish self-reliance, military strength, and rejection of compromise with Arab leaders, ideas that would later echo in his son's politics. Benjamin's mother, Sila Segal, was born in Petach Tikva in 1912. Her parents had immigrated from Minneapolis in the United States, originally from Lithuania in the Russian Empire, during the 1870s to escape anti-Semitism. Sila grew up in the early days of modern Jewish settlement in Palestine, witnessing the transformation from Ottoman rule to British Mandate and finally to Israeli independence. She was less publicly political than her husband, but shared his deep commitment to Zionism and the survival of the Jewish people. The Netanyahu family had three sons: Yonatan, born 1946, Benjamin, 1949, and Ido, 1952. The household was intellectual and disciplined,
Discussions often centered on Jewish history, the dangers of anti-Semitism, and the necessity of a strong Jewish state. Ben-Zion's revisionist views, skeptical of partition plans and peace negotiations, were a constant presence. The family moved between Israel and the United States in the 1950s and 1960s due to Ben-Zion's academic career, giving the boys a dual identity, rooted in Israel's struggle for existence, yet exposed to American freedom and opportunity. This background was formative. Benjamin grew up hearing stories of Jewish perseverance from medieval Spain to the Holocaust and the rebirth of Israel. His father's belief that Jews must never again rely on others for protection left a lasting mark. The move to America in the mid-1950s meant Benjamin attended high school in Cheltenham, Pennsylvania, but family life remained focused on Israel. Holidays, Hebrew lessons, and talk of the homeland kept the connection strong. The Zionist roots ran deep. Ben-Zion's generation had seen the British Mandate, Arab riots, and the fight for independence. Sila's family had been part of the early waves of settlement. Together, they instilled in their sons a sense of destiny, that Israel was not just a country, but a fulfillment of ancient promises and a refuge after centuries of exile. These early influences, a scholarly father with strong nationalist convictions, a mother tied to the pioneering spirit, and a childhood split between two worlds, prepared Benjamin for a life dedicated to Israel's security and strength. In the next sections, we will see how this foundation led him into military service during Israel's defining conflicts. Please stay with us. Benjamin Netanyahu's family background and Zionist roots, a blend of history, faith, and determination, were the soil in which his lifelong commitment to Israel took root.
Let us now turn our attention to Benjamin Netanyahu's dual identity, shaped by growing up between Israel and America, a formative experience that influenced his outlook, resilience, and understanding of the world. Born in Tel Aviv in 1949, Benjamin spent his early childhood in the young state of Israel during its most vulnerable years. The 1948 War of Independence had only just ended, and the nation was building itself amid constant tension along new borders. Life in Tel Aviv was modest but full of hope, a mix of immigrants from Europe, the Middle East, and beyond, all working to create a new society. In the mid-1950s, when Benjamin was about 6 years old, the family moved to the United States. His father, Benjamin Netanyahu, had accepted academic positions, first at Dropsy College in Philadelphia, and later at Cornell University in Ithaca, New York. This move was driven by Benjamin's scholarly career, but it gave Benjamin and his brothers a unique childhood, split between two very different worlds. In America, Benjamin attended public schools in Pennsylvania. He learned English fluently, played American sports, and experienced everyday life in a peaceful, prosperous country far removed from the security concerns of Israel. Yet home remained deeply Israeli. The family spoke Hebrew, observed Jewish holidays, read Israeli newspapers, and followed news from the homeland closely. Benjamin's parents never let the boys forget their roots. Stories of Israel's struggles, the importance of Jewish self-reliance, and the dangers of anti-Semitism were part of daily conversation. The family returned to Israel periodically, especially during summers and holidays. Benjamin attended school in Jerusalem at times and felt the contrast sharply. In Israel, he saw military service as a normal part of life, borders under threat, and a society still building itself. In America, he enjoyed stability, opportunity, and a sense of safety that Israel could not yet offer.
This back-and-forth life created a strong sense of dual belonging. He felt fully Israeli, proud of the new state and its achievements, yet also comfortable in American culture, with its emphasis on individual freedom and innovation. This dual identity had a lasting impact. In Israel, Benjamin absorbed the urgency of national survival and the need for strength. In America, he learned openness to new ideas, confidence in debate, and the value of education. He became fluent in both Hebrew and English, comfortable in both cultures, and able to understand the West from the inside. His father's revisionist Zionism, the belief in a strong, expansive Jewish state, remained the anchor, but American life added layers of pragmatism and adaptability. By his teenage years, Benjamin had lived more years in America than in Israel, yet his heart remained tied to the homeland. He returned permanently in 1967, at age 18, to join the Israel Defense Forces, just as the Six-Day War unfolded. The decision was natural. He saw military service as a duty, not a choice. His American education gave him discipline and analytical skills, while his Israeli upbringing gave him purpose and courage. This dual identity, Israeli by birth and conviction, American by experience, helped shape a leader who could speak to both worlds. He understood Western values and democracy, yet never wavered from his belief in Israel's right to exist securely in its historic land. In the next sections, we will see how this background led Benjamin into military service during Israel's defining conflicts. Please stay with us. Benjamin Netanyahu's dual identity, Israel and America, was not a contradiction, but a strength, forging a man equally at home in the world and deeply rooted in his people's story.
Let us now turn our attention to Benjamin Netanyahu's service in the Israel Defense Forces and the defining moment of the Six-Day War in June 1967, a period that shaped his character, his views on security, and his lifelong commitment to Israel's strength. Benjamin returned to Israel in 1967 at the age of 18, just as tensions in the Middle East reached a breaking point. The decision to join the IDF was natural for him. Military service was a rite of passage for young Israelis, and Benjamin felt a deep sense of duty to the country his parents had helped build. He volunteered for one of the most elite units in the IDF, Sayeret Matkal, the General Staff Reconnaissance Unit. This was a Special Forces commando group known for its rigorous training, high-risk missions, and secrecy. Admission was extremely selective. Only the strongest, most intelligent, and most determined soldiers were chosen. Benjamin passed the grueling tests and began training in counter-terrorism, reconnaissance, and long-range operations behind enemy lines. The Six-Day War erupted on June 5, 1967. Israel launched preemptive strikes against Egypt, Jordan, and Syria after weeks of escalating threats. Egypt closed the Straits of Tiran to Israeli shipping, massed troops in Sinai, and signed defense pacts with other Arab states. In less than 6 days, Israel achieved one of the most decisive victories in military history. The IDF captured the Gaza Strip and Sinai Peninsula from Egypt, the West Bank and East Jerusalem from Jordan, and the Golan Heights from Syria. It tripled Israel's territory and ended the immediate existential threat that had hung over the young state since 1948. Benjamin served during the war and its aftermath in Sayeret Matkal. His unit was involved in high-risk operations, including reconnaissance and raids to secure strategic positions. The victory was overwhelming, but the cost was felt deeply. Israel lost nearly 800 soldiers, and the new borders created both opportunity and ongoing tension. For Benjamin, the war reinforced a core belief: Israel must always be prepared to act decisively and unilaterally to survive. He saw that strength and preemption could turn the tide against larger enemies. After the war, Benjamin continued serving in Sayeret Matkal during the War of Attrition, an undeclared conflict with Egypt along the Suez Canal from 1967 to 1970. He participated in cross-border raids and intelligence missions. In May 1969, he was seriously injured during a training accident when an explosive device detonated prematurely. The injury required hospitalization, but he recovered and returned to duty, demonstrating the resilience that would mark his later career. His time in the IDF was intense and formative. He learned discipline, leadership under pressure, and the reality of constant threat. The elite unit fostered close bonds among soldiers, bonds of trust that lasted a lifetime. Benjamin's service gave him first-hand experience of Israel's vulnerability and the necessity of military readiness. His father's revisionist Zionism, the belief in a strong Jewish state willing to defend every inch, found practical expression in these years. By 1972, Benjamin completed his mandatory service and was discharged with the rank of captain. The experience left him with a deep conviction: Israel could not rely on others for its survival. Peace would only come through strength, not concessions. This belief would guide him through politics, diplomacy, and leadership in the decades ahead. In the next sections, we will see how the loss of his brother Yonatan at Entebbe in 1976 deepened this conviction and propelled Benjamin into public life. Please stay with us. Benjamin Netanyahu's service in the Six-Day War and the IDF, a time of danger, victory, and personal growth, forged the soldier who would one day lead his nation.
Let us begin with a simple truth. On March 31, 2009, Benjamin Netanyahu stood in the Knesset and took the oath as Prime Minister of Israel. Since that day, with only a short interruption of 18 months, he has never truly left power. Today, in 2026, he remains the longest-serving Prime Minister of Israel's history. A man who has outlasted wars, protests, corruption trials, coalition collapses, and even international arrest warrants. How does one person hold the highest office for so long in a democracy as fractured and volatile as Israel's? How does a politician so deeply loved by some and so fiercely hated by others keep returning to lead again and again? Some call him the guardian of Israel's security, the only leader strong enough to protect the nation against endless threats. Others call him a danger to democracy, a man who bent institutions, delayed justice, and pushed Israel towards permanent conflict rather than peace. His story is not just about politics, it is about survival. About a boy born in 1949, only 1 year after Israel itself was born, who grew up between two worlds, the newborn state of Israel and the safety of America. A soldier who fought in the Six-Day War and nearly died in the War of Attrition. A brother shattered by the death of Yonatan at Entebbe in 1976. A loss that hardened his belief that Israel must never again be weak.
He studied at MIT, built a career in diplomacy at the United Nations, and returned home to lead Likud, the party of the right. He became prime minister for the first time in 1996, the youngest ever at age 46, but lost power after only 3 years. Many thought his career was over. They were wrong. He came back in 2009 and never really left. He turned Israel into a high-tech security fortress, Iron Dome in the sky, cyber walls, precision strikes. He signed the Abraham Accords, peace with 4 Arab nations, something no one thought possible. He faced down Iran, Hezbollah, Hamas, and the international community, often alone. Yet the cost has been high. Corruption indictments, massive street protests, judicial reform battles that divided the nation, and the deadliest attack in Israel's history on October 7, 2023, a day that shook the country to its core and placed new questions over his legacy. Today, in 2026, Netanyahu stands at another crossroads. Will he lead Israel through another war? Will he finally face judgment in court? Or will he once again defy every prediction and remain in power? This documentary tells the full story, from a child of the new state, through wars and diplomacy, to the man who has shaped modern Israel more than anyone alive. We will walk through his childhood in Tel Aviv and America, his time as a soldier in the Six-Day War and Yom Kippur, the pain of losing his brother at Entebbe in 1976, his rise from diplomat to prime minister, the doctrine that made him unbreakable, the Abraham Accords that changed the Middle East, the corruption cases that almost ended him, and the October 7th attacks that redefined everything. Stay with us, because the story of Benjamin Netanyahu is not just the story of one man. It is the story of Israel itself, its fears, its strength, its divisions, and its uncertain future. This is only the beginning.
Let us now turn our attention to the Entebbe raid of July 1976 and the death of Benjamin Netanyahu's older brother, Yonatan, a tragic event that profoundly influenced Benjamin's life, his views on security, and his future path. By the summer of 1976, Benjamin had completed his studies at MIT and was working in the United States. His older brother, Yonatan, born in 1946, had remained in Israel and risen to become a senior commander in the elite Sayeret Matkal unit, the same special forces group Benjamin had served in during his IDF years. On June 27, 1976, an Air France flight from Tel Aviv to Paris with a stopover in Athens was hijacked shortly after takeoff. The hijackers, 2 members of the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine and 2 German revolutionaries, diverted the plane first to Benghazi in Libya for refueling, then to Entebbe Airport in Uganda. The Ugandan dictator Idi Amin welcomed the hijackers and allowed them to hold the hostages at the old terminal building. The hijackers separated the passengers. Non-Israeli hostages were released, while 106 Israelis and the Air France crew remained captive. They demanded the release of 53 terrorists held in prisons in Israel and other countries, threatening to kill the hostages if their demands were not met. Israel faced an agonizing decision. The hostages were 4,000 kilometers away, far beyond normal rescue range. Yet the government, led by Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin and Defense Minister Shimon Peres, refused to negotiate with terrorists. Instead, they authorized a daring rescue operation, codenamed Operation Thunderbolt, later known as Operation Yonatan, in honor of the fallen commander. Yonatan Netanyahu was chosen to lead the assault force. On July 3-4, 1976, 4 Israeli Hercules transport planes flew low across Africa, refueled in Kenya, and landed at Entebbe Airport under cover of darkness. The commandos stormed the terminal, killed the hijackers and Ugandan soldiers guarding the hostages, and rescued 102 of the 106 captives. 3 hostages died during the raid, and Dora Bloch, an elderly British-Israeli passenger who had been hospitalized earlier, was later murdered by Ugandan authorities. The operation was a stunning success, one of the most audacious hostage rescues in history, but it came at a heavy price. Yonatan Netanyahu was shot by a Ugandan soldier while directing the evacuation and died of his wounds. He was the only Israeli soldier killed in the raid. His death at the age of 30 left a deep wound in the Netanyahu family. For Benjamin, the loss was devastating. Yonatan had been more than a brother. He was a role model, a hero in the IDF, and a symbol of selfless courage. Benjamin flew to Israel for the funeral, where thousands mourned Yonatan as a national hero. The event crystallized Benjamin's belief that Israel must never show weakness or negotiate with terrorists. He later wrote that Yonatan's death taught him the price of standing firm and reinforced his conviction that security must come before compromise. In memory of his brother, Benjamin founded the Yonatan Netanyahu Anti-Terror Institute in 1978. The institute organized conferences, published research, and educated the public about the dangers of terrorism, a cause that would remain central to Benjamin's life. The Entebbe raid and the death of Yonatan, a moment of national triumph and private sorrow, marked a turning point in Benjamin's life and strengthened his lifelong commitment to Israel's security. In the next sections, we will see how this personal tragedy and renewed purpose led Benjamin to diplomacy and the early stages of his political career. Please stay with us. The Entebbe raid and the death of Yonatan Netanyahu, a moment of national triumph and private sorrow, marked a turning point in Benjamin's life and strengthened his lifelong commitment to Israel's security.
Let us now turn our attention to Benjamin Netanyahu's early career and the founding of the Yonatan Netanyahu Anti-Terror Institute, a period of transition from military and academic life to public advocacy, driven by personal tragedy and a growing commitment to Israel's security. After completing his education at MIT in the late 1970s, Benjamin briefly worked in the United States, including a position with the Boston Consulting Group, a prestigious management consulting firm. He applied his skills in architecture and business management to analyze problems and propose solutions, experience that sharpened his analytical mind and strategic thinking. Yet his thoughts remained with Israel. The Entebbe raid on July 4, 1976, had changed everything. His older brother, Yonatan, commander of the rescue operation, was the only Israeli soldier killed while saving 100 hostages from terrorists at Entebbe Airport in Uganda. Yonatan's death at the age of 30 left a profound void in the family. For Benjamin, it was more than personal grief. It was a stark reminder of the cost of defending Israel and the constant threat of terrorism.
he felt compelled to honor his brother's sacrifice by continuing the fight against those who targeted Jews and Israelis. In 1978, Benjamin returned permanently to Israel and founded the Yonatan Netanyahu Anti-Terror Institute. The institute was established as a non-profit organization dedicated to studying terrorism, raising public awareness, and developing strategies to combat it. Named in memory of Yonatan, it organized conferences, published research papers, and brought together experts, military, academic, and intelligence to discuss the growing global threat of terrorism. At the time, terrorism was rising worldwide. Hijackings, bombings, and attacks on civilians were becoming more frequent, often targeting Israel. The institute filled an important gap. In the late 1970s, there were few organizations focused specifically on understanding and countering terrorism from both a practical and intellectual perspective. Benjamin served as its director and principal advocate. He traveled, lectured, and wrote about the need for strong counter-terrorism policies, arguing that weakness invited attack, while resolve and preemption would save lives. His speeches emphasized that Israel, as a small nation surrounded by hostile forces, could not afford to wait for threats to materialize. This work marked Benjamin's first major step into public life beyond the military. He began appearing in the media, giving interviews, and building a reputation as an articulate defender of Israel's security policies. The Institute also gave him a platform to connect with international experts and policymakers, experience that proved valuable when he later entered diplomacy and politics. During this time, Benjamin's personal life continued to evolve. His first marriage to Miriam Weissman had ended, and in 1981 he married Fleur Cates, a British student he met in the United States. That marriage was brief and ended in 1984. In 1991, he married Sarah Ben Artzi, with whom he has two sons, Yair, born 1991, and Avner, born 1994. The family remained private, but Sarah provided steady support as Benjamin's public role grew. The anti-terror work was deeply personal. Benjamin often spoke of Yonatan as a model of courage and self-sacrifice, qualities he sought to instill in others through the Institute. The organization helped shift public and international understanding of terrorism from isolated incidents to a coordinated global threat. It laid the groundwork for Benjamin's later political focus on security above all else. By the early 1980s, Benjamin's work at the Institute had brought him recognition and connections. He was invited to speak abroad, advise on counterterrorism, and engage with policymakers. This visibility opened the door to his diplomatic career, first as Deputy Chief of Mission in Washington, and then as Israel's ambassador to the United Nations. In the next sections, we will see how this early advocacy led Benjamin into formal diplomacy and his rapid rise in Israeli politics. Please stay with us. Benjamin Netanyahu's early career and the founding of the Yonatan Netanyahu Anti-Terror Institute, born from loss and dedicated to prevention, marked his first steps from private citizen to public defender of Israel's safety. Let us now turn our attention to Benjamin Netanyahu's entry into politics and his rise to leadership of the Likud party, a decisive phase that transformed him from diplomat and advocate into one of Israel's most influential political figures. After serving as Israel's ambassador to the United Nations from 1984 to 1988, Benjamin returned to Israel in 1988 at age 39. He had built a strong international reputation as a clear, forceful defender of Israel's positions. His speeches at the UN, television appearances, and connections in Washington had made him a known name both at home and abroad. Upon his return, Benjamin decided to enter domestic politics. He joined the Likud party, the main right-wing political force in Israel, founded in 1973 as a merger of several nationalist and liberal groups. Likud had been the dominant party from 1977 to 1992 under leaders like Menachem Begin and Yitzhak Shamir. It stood for a strong Jewish state, free market economics, and skepticism toward territorial concessions to Arab neighbors. Benjamin ran for a seat in the Knesset, Israel's parliament, in the 1988 elections. He was placed high on Likud's list and won election as a member of the Knesset, or MK. His entry was swift and impressive. Within months, Prime Minister Yitzhak Shamir appointed him Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs, a senior role for a newcomer. Benjamin's diplomatic experience, fluency in English, and strong communication skills made him valuable in explaining Israel's positions internationally. The late 1980s were a time of change in Israel. The first Intifada, Palestinian uprisings in the West Bank and Gaza, began in December 1987. It brought daily violence, international pressure, and debates over how to respond. Benjamin advocated a firm security approach while calling for negotiations from strength. His visibility grew through media interviews and public speeches. In 1993, Likud faced a leadership contest after Yitzhak Shamir stepped down following the party's defeat in the 1992 elections. Benjamin ran for party chairman against several established figures. He campaigned on a platform of renewal, promising to modernize Likud, reach younger voters, and present a clear alternative to Labor's peace process with the Palestinians. He won the leadership in March 1993, becoming head of the opposition at age 43. As Likud leader, Benjamin rebuilt the party's image. He focused on security, economic reform, and opposition to the Oslo Accords, signed in 1993 between Israel and the PLO. He argued that the agreements gave too much land without guaranteeing safety. His speeches were direct and effective, often delivered in fluent English to international audiences. He became a frequent guest on American television, defending Israel's right to self-defense. The 1995 assassination of Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin, who had led the peace process, shocked the nation. Benjamin faced criticism for the heated rhetoric at right-wing rallies, though he condemned the murder. The event deepened divisions, but it also created an opening. In the May 1996 elections, Likud campaigned against continued concessions. Benjamin narrowly defeated Labor's Shimon Peres, becoming Israel's youngest prime minister at age 46. His rapid rise from diplomat in 1984 to Knesset member in 1988, Likud leader in 1993, and Prime Minister in 1996 was remarkable. It was built on strong communication, strategic alliances within Likud, and a message that resonated with voters concerned about security. His diplomatic background gave him credibility abroad, while his brother's death and military service gave him authenticity at home. These early political years set the stage for a career defined by persistence, coalition building, and a focus on Israel's strength. In the next sections, we will see how his first term as prime minister unfolded,
amid the Oslo peace process and internal challenges. Please stay with us. Benjamin Netanyahu's entry into politics and leadership of the Likud, a journey from ambassador to opposition leader to prime minister, showed his ability to seize opportunities and speak for Israel's security.
Let us now turn our attention to Benjamin Netanyahu's diplomatic roles, first as Deputy Chief of Mission in Washington, and then as Israel's ambassador to the United Nations, a crucial phase that launched his public career and established him as a strong voice for Israel on the international stage. After founding the Yonatan Netanyahu Anti-Terror Institute in 1978, Benjamin's work in counterterrorism advocacy brought him recognition beyond Israel. His lectures, writings, and media appearances showed a clear, articulate defense of Israel's security needs. This visibility led to his first formal diplomatic appointment. In 1982, at age 33, Benjamin was named Deputy Chief of Mission in the Israeli Embassy in Washington, D.C., the second highest position after the ambassador. The early 1980s were a tense time for Israel. The country had invaded Lebanon in June 1982 to push out PLO forces launching attacks from the north. The war drew international criticism, especially after civilian casualties in Beirut. Benjamin's role was to explain Israel's position to American officials, journalists, and the public. He met with members of Congress, appeared on television, and built relationships with policymakers. His fluency in English, American education, and confident style made him effective in this environment. Washington in the 1980s was the center of global power. The Reagan administration was strongly supportive of Israel as a Cold War ally against Soviet influence in the Middle East. Benjamin worked to strengthen this partnership, emphasizing shared values of democracy and anti-terrorism. He also countered criticism of Israeli actions in Lebanon, arguing that the operation was necessary to protect northern Israeli communities. The experience taught him how to navigate American politics, build coalitions, and communicate Israel's case persuasively, skills he would use for decades. In 1984, Benjamin was appointed Israel's ambassador to the United Nations in New York, a high-profile role at age 35. The UN in the 1980s was often hostile to Israel. Resolutions condemning Israel outnumbered those on all other countries combined. The General Assembly frequently equated Zionism with racism, and the PLO had observer status. Benjamin approached the position with determination. He used the UN platform to defend Israel forcefully and unapologetically. As ambassador from 1984 to 1988, Benjamin became known for his sharp speeches and media appearances. He challenged anti-Israel resolutions, exposed hypocrisy in UN debates, and highlighted terrorism sponsored by certain member states. He appeared regularly on American television, explaining Israel's positions with clarity and conviction. His style, direct, articulate, and unflinching, earned him both admirers and critics. Supporters saw him as a strong defender of Israel's rights. Critics accused him of confrontation rather than diplomacy. During this time, Benjamin also built international networks. He met with world leaders, diplomats, and journalists, learning to navigate global politics. He argued consistently that Israel sought peace but could not negotiate under threat. His tenure coincided with the First Intifada in 1987, Palestinian uprisings in the West Bank and Gaza. Benjamin defended Israel's response while calling for security as the basis for any future talks. The UN years were formative. They gave Benjamin a global stage, honed his public speaking, and reinforced his belief that Israel must speak boldly and never apologize for defending itself. He left the ambassadorship in 1988 to return to Israel and enter domestic politics, running for the Knesset with Likud. These diplomatic roles in Washington and at the UN transformed Benjamin from a private advocate into a public figure. They prepared him for the political battles ahead and solidified his reputation as a tireless defender of Israel's interests. In the next sections, we will see how this experience led to his rapid rise in Likud and his first term as prime minister. Please stay with us. Benjamin Netanyahu's diplomatic roles in Washington and at the UN, a time of advocacy, confrontation, and global exposure, marked his emergence as a forceful voice for Israel on the world stage.